Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors, episode 83.
Welcome to Life by Design, the podcast for chiropractors. Here's your host, Dr. Jamie Richards.
Welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors. I'm your host, Dr. Jamie Richards, and today I bring on special guest, colleague, friend, and Life by Design doc, Dr. Stephen Gall. For those people who've listened to the podcast before, we'll bring guests on from time to time from varying aspects, some chiropractors, some outside the profession, and I thought that this would be a great experience for those people who are either struggling in practice or for those docs in practice that are doing fine, they're doing okay, but they know somewhere inside that they can be doing a lot better. And there's a lot to learn from Stephen's experience and his example of going through that struggle, knowing that he'd be fine if nothing ever changed, but that there was something that kept calling to him, something that kept resonating with him that he could do better. And we go through some of the challenges and some of the triggers and pivot points that helped him get things on track. Listen right to the end, guys, and check out the show notes if you want to see our opportunities for my and Dr. Mike's practices. We're bringing on our new associates, so check those out if you'd love to come and train with us. And thank you so much for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic. Dr. Stephen Gall, welcome to Life by Design for Chiropractors.
Jamie Richards, so excited to be here with you today.
It is exciting, and we'll get into your background a little bit, and I talked about you a touch in the pre-show for those who jumped right into the podcast here, but, we've been friends for some time now. You've been not just a client, but a pal for, now it's, I don't know how many years, I guess, probably 7?
Yeah, it's been at least that, I think.
Yeah, somewhere in that time frame. And really, Stephen was early in the Life by Design for Chiropractors group, really ahead of the curve, an early adopter, if you will. And, I've personally watched Stephen go through a lot of transformation and growth, and just in chatting with him recently about some of the just really fantastic changes that have happened. And there's some things that I know were big switches for you in terms of mindset, especially. And some of the things that you told me when we prepped for this are exactly what I think a lot of the people listening in need to get, because they're in a place where you were in terms of, it's not like you were struggling, but there was that mental switch that hadn't flipped yet. And we had so many conversations, and the fact that it now flipped and you're seeing the results, I think is worthy of people talking about. So Steve, why don't you jump in, tell people just a little bit about your background and who you are?
Well, before I even do that, Jamie, you mentioned something there, and it really brought me back to, if you remember, you were here. We're in Winnipeg, and you were being here in Winnipeg. We went out for lunch one day, and we talked about trying to get somebody to ask a little bit more about chiropractic and what we did. And I think you used the way I did it as an example of how not to do it.
I think I did.
And I don't forget that, and I won't forget that. But that was probably the low point.
Great. I'm glad I was part of your low point.
Because that was a time where I was really trying so hard to make things happen, and just trying anything and everything. And I just didn't know how to do it properly. But for me, chiropractic, I've been in practice it'll be 27 years in May this year. Wow. Graduated from CNCC, and coming out of school, it was just kind of do what you learned in school, just talk to people about pain and adjust them. And I didn't really have mentors. I didn't have anybody who really showed me the way. It was just kind of kick me out into the world and do it. I associated for a couple of years and learned a lot from the guy that was my mentor. But when I went to open my own practice, I kind of reverted back to, the things I learned and what I knew. And that was just give people what they wanted. And in the initial stages of that, I really struggled. I struggled for a long time. I opened my first practice in 97, and it really did not do well. Sorry, 95. And then I did not do well. And I was on the verge of, I wouldn't say declaring bankruptcy, but I was really panicking about what was next. And then managed to make a decision, which was to move a little closer to my house, open kind of brand new. And for me, that's how I work. If I'm doing something wrong, I need to kind of just wipe the slate clean and start over. Right. So it's what I do with my practice. Sold my practice, started something new, and opened it with open room adjusting and started to become involved with different coaching groups, ultimately coming to you guys at Life by Design, where I learned third paradigm chiropractic, which really is what spoke to me. Up until then, I was probably second paradigm. This nerve goes to that organ, and if we adjust this bone, it'll help that organ. And learning a little bit more about third paradigm and what it meant, and really fashioned me into a bit of a different chiropractor in terms of my thinking. But even there, our practice grew, but I would say I struggled a lot in terms of being the practitioner and the doc I wanted to be. Right. I was comfortable around 200 patient visits a week. We floated in around 180 to 200. When we really, really were on fire, we got up to 225. And I remember a time where we climbed up to 260, and I was like, oh my goodness, we're only going to hit that 300 mark.
Right.
And we just crashed right back down again. And for years, I was stuck around that 200 mark. And I think one of the reasons we started talking, I think you asked me to come on, was because we've seen a really gigantic growth in our practice, at least the way I'll frame it. For me, in the last year, where we've gone from that 200, 220, where we're seeing 360, 370, 380 people a week now.
That's amazing.
And that happened in about a year.
Yeah, that's a fantastic change. And let me skip back, because, a lot of people listening in, to almost double your practice in a year, people are thinking, whoa, what magic did you do? But right. I think there's some valuable lessons in a couple of your earlier points. One, coming out of school, learning the CMCC model, and then getting into a really busy practice with your mentor, and probably having this feeling like, wow, I can do this. It's 500 visits a week. We're ready to go. This can be great. What do you think happened? And what was the line of thinking that took you from, hey, I'm seeing 500 visits a week now, and then you go open your own practice, and it's a major crash and it's a struggle.
Yeah, so that 500 visits a week that I was seeing were not my patients; they were his patients. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I will say is that I got paid very little to adjust his 500 patient visits a week.
Right.
But I would never trade that. I had 2 years of adjusting that many people. I honed my skill and got my hands to be where they are today. And I think the chiropractor I am today because of it. So that was invaluable, and I would never put a monetary value on that.
Right.
But when I got out and I opened my own practice, I didn't have the skills necessary to talk to people, to see how to grow the practice, to see where to get new patients from. I didn't have to do that with him.
Right.
And I never learned how to do it on my own. So I went into a practice saying, hey, I see what it can be, but I didn't have the systems in place. And most importantly, I didn't have my own head in the right space.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's the point I wanted to get to. And you're right. As much as you had the skill set from a physical checking and correcting standpoint, I've been checked by you and you're fantastic. And so you have that part of it. I think you're right. It's when you step into having to run your own business and have systems and communication and all these other things. It's one thing to show up and have 500 people there and just be good technically at checking and correcting versus actually running, operating, growing. And again, now you've led up to the point that I wanted to get to. And I love, when we prepped for this, and I was reading the notes that you came back with, and, having known you for so long and watching your transformation, I almost, it made me so happy to read this because, it's something that all along we had always been, I think, trying to get to. And so I do want you to talk about this. And that's really how your mindset shifted from, and to maybe talk about how this was for you, feeling like, everything was because of things that weren't you, outside influences, that you needed everybody to like you. And you made this switch where now you're realizing, wow, it's actually me. I'm the problem. I need to be a leader and I need to be the authority. That's a big switch for people. How did you go about that? Was it in an instant? Was there a transition? Was there any particular incidences that led to that? I want to know more about that.
I would say there wasn't one particular thing that at least comes to mind in terms of that. I think there were pieces for sure that if I look back on, certainly joining, Life by Design and reading some of the things that you guys had recommended. Think and Grow Rich was a seminal piece for me. Ayn Rand's work was really, really interesting to me.
Sure.
And starting to just think differently about an individual, think differently about myself as an individual. And I kind of grew up in a family where as the firstborn and a smart kid, and I was always an straight A student, and it was something my mother used to make herself feel good about her children. So she always held me up as this on this pedestal of, look at my son.
Right.
I'm 51 now. She still does that. But I kind of learned to accept that mantle. I kind of learned that that's who I was. So I got my sense of self-worth from others. And what that meant was, in practice, I needed everybody else who came, all the patients who came to see me, all the practice members who came in to see me, I needed them to like me. I needed them to want me. I needed them to look up to me. And it wasn't me creating that environment. It wasn't me being the person to be that person to look up to, me being the person to lead them. It was just, that's what it always was. People were supposed to look up to me because my mother said, look at my son. And that's how I saw it. And if they didn't, then I didn't know how to deal with it. So that was one of the biggest shifts, is just understanding that how I thought, the way I thought about things, letting all the outside things. And, we hear this all the time. You take a 200 patient visit a week chiropractor in one city, move them to another city where they think they'll be better. There's still a 200 PV per week chiropractor, right? And I constantly said to myself, I'm not a 200 PV per week chiropractor. I'm a 300 to 400, 500 doc. Why am I not there? And I looked for systems, and I looked for pieces and all these different things. And it wasn't that. And I think as we go through this talk today, you asked me what were the specifics I did. We'll get into that, I think, a little bit later. As I talk about the specifics, it's going to seem like it's, here are the systems, here are the pieces I used, but it still wasn't those things. It was a mindset for me. Right. And that biggest mindset shift had to be that it wasn't that I had to give people what they needed. I had to give them, or what they wanted. I had to give them what they needed, number one, but that I had to let go of this idea that I was the leader and authority for them. I had to become the leader and authority for them.
No, I mean, Stephen, we could end the podcast there, and people listening would get everything they needed for today. That said, I think the underlying framework is that, and we're going to get into some of the tactics and strategies that you've used to grow your practice over the last, year and a half. But I think it's important that people understand that the underlying foundation is, and the thing that changed is your mindset. So as we keep going through this, guys, don't forget that Stephen said that was the change, because you had tried tactical changes and system changes and other things along the way. And so
hundreds.
Exactly. And I know you well, and we know each other well. So we're having a chuckle as we have this conversation, but I'm so excited, as I said, almost like a proud father here to listen to you talk about these things. It does make me so excited, because I remember a lot of these conversations, and, and I can hear in your voice the change and the growth. So let's talk about some of the strategies and the tactics, always, of course, understanding that it's the mindset that really made the difference. But first thing I want to ask you about is, and I guess this is part of the kind of stuck mindset, but you were stuck on having one CA. And I remember these conversations over and over. And, that was a big change for you, is changing just your business model.
That was huge for me. That was maybe the biggest business model change I had to make. As a single practitioner, nobody else in the office with me, I got to this place where I said, this one person I work with was so important. And if they left, it was a struggle to find the other person. I remember having people leave for various reasons. And I ran the practice by myself for weeks trying to find the right person. And I would go through hundreds of interviews looking for this one person. And I don't know what happened. I'm not sure. I think it was at some point you and I were talking maybe about it, and I was seeing a lot of you and other docs having part-time staff and different people. And I just said, okay, look, this hasn't worked for me for 20 years. Let's make a change.
It only took you 20 years, Steve. That's good.
Well, I told you it takes me a long time to realize the need for change and to make it. So
your poor wife.
Well, my poor wife, indeed.
I'm joking.
No, you're absolutely right. You're 100% right. I mean, the person I was in terms of, looking for outside things that made it not great. Could have been my family life. Could have been my wife at times. Those are things that I made happen. Right. And it was me that had to see the reality of that. But I used to send, I think I texted or I wrote a sentence in the email I sent back when we were going through these notes. And one of the things that happened was that I said that it was my busyness that helped me grow my business.
Right.
And that was one of the fundamental things that happened, which was we shifted to having 2 part-time staff at all times. So first thing I had to do was knock down my front desk. We redid a front desk that allowed for 2 people to sit up there. That single thing, hey, I only have a desk here for 1 person, kept me from having 2 people for such a long time. Knocking that desk down was such a fundamental shift, a change in my thinking, that it allowed me to make some other changes. But so that was a big one. It was having 2 people at the front all the time. And I've heard that before. When you get to a certain point, you need more staff to be able to accommodate. But it seemed like as we had those 2 people there, they were just filling with more and more people calling. It was becoming a busier place. Those were part of the other strategies that we did as well to start having that happen, the growth happen.
Well, I think, a really great point that you made is, you knocked the desk down in order to have 2 staff. But the fact is you took a really significant step. I mean, you could have easily said, kind of put your tiptoe in and said, we're going to get a second staff, but you know what? I'm not sure if it's going to work. So we'll just leave the desk here for 1 person. We'll jam 2 people in. We'll see how it goes. But you said, and I think this is one of the things that we've recognized now for you is, when you take action, and even if it's almost kicking yourself in the butt and forcing yourself to take action, you're the kind of guy that once you get in, you go all in, but you have, at least in the past, it was a much slower process, right? For you to buy in or take the step. So it's really exciting to hear you say, I just knocked the desk down and had to have 2 staff because I'll
be honest with you. And I'll tell you the truth, which is at one point I did exactly what you said I should do. I did have 2 people behind that desk and discovered that it was not a tenable situation.
Right.
So it wasn't immediately that I did that, but when I finally decided, and it wasn't an immediate decision. It did take some time for me to decide to finally do it. It was a big shift, but that was kind of a springboard. That was a time where I said, okay, we've made this shift. Now I can't piss around anymore. I can't just sit on my hands and wait for this to happen. I have to start doing things. And when you said to me, what was the thing you did? There wasn't I think I said to you, there wasn't a plan. I didn't sit down and write out step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Things just started happening. And I think the biggest thing that I had to do was get out of this position where I'd go to work, I'd adjust my patients, I'd be done for my shift, I'd go home, I'd sit and watch some TV, or I'd relax, or I'd have a nap, I'd go back. Mm-hmm. Now what had started happening was I started doing the other pieces of this puzzle, making calls, connecting with people, working on projects, etc. And becoming busier made me busier. Right. So we started having, we would have 4 or 5 new people a week call our practice. And at the height of it now, we're consistently seeing, we're a little bit quieter now in January, but leading up to December, we were seeing between 10 and 15 new people every week. Yeah. And it wasn't like I was doing anything tremendously significantly different in terms of marketing. It was all these little pieces. Right.
It was all of it leading up together. And, the point there that's, very important for you guys listening in is that, you're saying, look, I was just kind of coasting in my practice before and it was fine. I was doing my 200 a week and having a good life, but you decided it was time to work hard. We'd always had in our training together, we always had a big long list of things to do, right? It was always there. And you decided to actually start doing those things. And, as you said, getting busier. And there's just something to be said about, when you're in that mindset of go, 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 right? It's like, what's next? Let's be relentless. Let's take on this next step. And you really start speeding up the growth cycle, because you're getting to the next thing. And even if there's some failures along the way, you're speeding up that cycle of, well, I did this thing, it failed, now I'm on to the next thing. Versus if that one thing took 5 times as long and then it still failed, then it's taking you 5 times as long to get to the next thing that's going to work. So good for you. I just love hearing this stuff. So let's get into some of the tactics, because I think some of these are very interesting. And, we've talked a lot, and you and I chatted on the phone last night a bit, about how people listen to Life by Design for Chiropractors. And Mike and I, or Kreischer and I, will talk about different funnels, and we'll talk about some of the online things that we're doing. And you were pretty direct, and you said, I stopped doing all that stuff. It just wasn't working well. And, it's a whole complicated thing that you have to have a pretty good knowledge base, and there's a lot of testing and retesting. That said, I don't want you to say you don't know what you're doing, because you have a funnel. You're just going about it a different way. So I'd love for you to tell me a bit about a couple of things that you did. Let's talk about the radio show first, and then we'll jump into what some of the Instagram tactics are that you're using.
Sure. So radio show was something that kind of dropped into my lap. There's a colleague of mine that's been doing a radio show here in the city for a number of years. And, very much in a third paradigm. He practices very similarly and came to me and said, do you want to do this with me? And there's a cost to doing it. We're buying the airtime. But we have a good spot where we are played Sunday mornings at 10 and Saturdays at 11 a.m. So both 2 time slots. We have a certain demographic that we see. It's a slightly older demographic that we get, but people who have some disposable income, people whose kids are gone, and people who are very intimately or very connected with their health. They're really concerned about their health and aging, and that's something that we certainly see happening with aging populations now. People want whatever strategies they can get to get there. So I'm not saying everybody that comes to our practice is 70 or 80 years old. No, not the case. Right. In fact, we get some young people from it as well, but there certainly is a demographic that we see. We have some consistency with it, and when we finish the show, so we pre-recorded. We played on those 2 times, and I'm getting at least 3, 4, 5 people every time we do the show every week that call us and say, I'd like to come in. Those people in turn, I've become very good at asking for referrals and talking about family members coming in. And so that's one piece of it. It's developed from that. And that's taken some time. Certainly, just like any marketing piece, it doesn't happen overnight. Mm-hmm. So it did take 6 months or so of doing it until I started to see that. And now you have this kind of authority now about you. And it sounds weird, but when you have a radio show and people have heard you on the radio, and when they come and meet you in the office, they have kind of a look about them like, oh, you're the voice on the radio. And I wouldn't say everybody should do radio. Everybody's not built for radio. I'd say for me, radio has been an easier mode of getting information to masses than Facebook video. I'm just super awkward on video, and it wasn't I've tried it before and I just feel very awkward. And so it's not something I gravitate towards. It's not something I want to do. You and Cratio do an amazing job of doing online video stuff. And I wish I could do it like you guys. And maybe I will at one point in my life be able to, but right now, no, you don't want to see me on a video.
Steve, first of all, I think you're being far too modest. I've actually seen you speak. We had you as one of the speakers at LifeCon in that year that you were there. So again, I think you're being a little modest. That said, I think that there's a couple of things about radio and the way you're doing it that I think are part of why it's working well for you. I think that, in part, you have a funnel, right? You're creating good content for people. You are getting consistent listeners. And that's one of the things when I asked you, what do you think the difference is between radio and, say, just doing a radio show on Instagram or doing a radio show, quote unquote, on Facebook? And you and I have already talked about ways that you can leverage the content that you're creating, and we can drive some traffic to your show that's already done and try and get some more leads generated. But that's you and I will talk about that later. But I think that from a marketing standpoint, one of the important points is that, the marketing tactics change, but the principles don't change. And so you're following really successful marketing principles. So whether it's radio, whether it's Facebook, it doesn't matter. You're doing the part that works, which is you're creating good content, you're engaging people, and you're making a reasonable offer for people. And I think that's something that, even you said it when we talked, you said, I know you don't like making offers. And it's actually, that's not the case. I don't think that making an offer is necessarily a bad thing. There's just some rules around making an offer that need to be followed. And when you explained a bit about what you were doing with your offer, I think your offer is great. And obviously the fact that you're getting, 5, 6 calls and people coming in as new patients on a weekly basis from your show, and that those people are actually getting accepted into care and they're referring people, I think you've clearly followed the marketing rules. So let's not bypass the fact that you're doing something that's working. So it doesn't matter if it's radio, it doesn't matter if it's Facebook, it's all the same. You've got to create good content. It's got to get to people, which is, maybe where the radio show is helpful for you. It's saving you from having to actually get it to people, right? Whereas if you were creating the traffic on Facebook, you'd have to know enough how to create audiences and do those things, which I think we can still repurpose what you're doing and not have to reinvent the wheel and actually leverage it and try and double the leads that you're getting. So again,
we'll definitely discuss that.
Something you and I will discuss, but
yes,
you're doing a great job because you're creating the value and then you're making an offer. And if people are listening to you, and this is what you said, I said, what's the difference for you in your mind between doing the online and doing the radio? And I think you were right, is you do tend to get a repetitive audience on the radio, right? People come back, they listen to the Ask the Experts, every Sunday at 10:30 over and over and over again. So when you start making that offer, which is really just, again, giving people an opportunity. And I think in chiropractic, we do one of two things. We either make an offer that's ridiculous, like the $4 examination, right? Or you do what I've done in the past, which is make no offer at all, because we're constantly giving. Mm-hmm. And if people follow Gary V, we forget to do the right hook, right? It's just like jab, 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 jab. And, every now and then you want to throw a right hook in, which is really the offer and making it available for people to come in. So I think, what you've done is taken something that a lot of people aren't doing anymore, which is radio. And I'm not saying people should do or not do radio, but the fact is you've done a great job with it and it's been working for you in terms of getting good pre-qualified new people coming to the door.
100%. And that's something that, we'll keep doing for sure at this point, based on our response. It doesn't make sense not to. We talked about the ROI and we've got a 2-to-1. So at this point, I'm doubling my money with what people are coming in with, what it's costing me. It makes sense to do it. I do want to learn social media a little bit better. And that's, when I say learn social media a little bit better, I think I've picked up on, we talked about this Instagram thing that I've been doing. So I picked up on a little something that I just kind of stumbled upon by accident. And I think I said to you, Gary V maybe talks about this.
Let's shift to that next. We got a little bit of time left for today's episode. I'd love to hear about this, and we chatted about yesterday, but I think what you're doing is really just solid again. And whether you're doing it or not, you're following very strong marketing principles. And, you said, well, I kind of fell into this, but you're following principles that should yield positive results. So the fact that you're getting results isn't really surprising to me. And then when you break it down, I'll help the listeners understand, why this is working for you. But explain the tactic you're using and how it's unfolded.
Right. So we have a presence on Instagram and Facebook, and we have followers. I think on Instagram we have maybe 350 followers. It's not a huge number; it's not a small number.
Yeah.
But of those 350, there's easily 100 to 150 of them that are people who are looking for something from me. So it's weight loss programs and coaching programs and marketing programs that follow you with the hope of you follow them back, and they'll do. So you don't have, if you're posting on Instagram about things you're doing in the office, you're not reaching a lot of people. And beyond that, you're reaching the people who already follow you. You're reaching your own patients and practice members who you've asked to follow you, who are already bought into your process.
Right.
And to me, it's an audience. It's already a captured audience to some effect.
Sure. Yep.
So what I decided to do was, and again, this is something I kind of stumbled on. I started following some local people, and I gave the example of a local company that makes gym equipment. So they do kettlebells and bands and ropes and a bunch of other things that they do. And often when they sell their product to others, those other people will post about using their product on Instagram, and then that company will repost those posts. So I'm following the company. I'm seeing the company repost about some of their people using their products. Well, I start to search out and follow, or at least look at some of those people. And what I discovered was that there was somebody, the first time it happened, somebody who had a public profile. If I go and look at some of the gym pictures they had up, when I clicked on a picture, they posted where they work out, which was a Good Life facility right near my office. So if look at a couple other pictures, I realized that there were some pictures locally in the community there. So she was around the community. She was a fitness person. She exercised a lot. So I approached her and said, I wondered if she was a trainer. Mm-hmm. And in this case, asked her if she trained people in the area. As a Life by Design person, exercise is important to us. And I want to be able to refer to other people. So refer to you. Are you a trainer? And she said, I'm not a trainer, but I'm interested in what you do. I've never seen a chiropractor before. And she had some spinal issues, ended up coming in. From her coming in, she has thousands of people that she has on Instagram. She has done stories on stuff that I've done with her. She's posted repeatedly about coming into the practice. She feels so much better. Her husband is a patient. She has referred at least a dozen people from her workplace. He's done the same. And then people are coming in based on the stories that she's talking about. So what I found was that, the 300 people that I was reaching on my own Instagram was a drop in the bucket compared to getting this person in and having her post to the 2,000 people that follow her.
Right. And on top of that, and I know you're already going to say this, but you're getting an endorsement from somebody else. And that's different from you getting on Instagram and saying, I'm great. And somebody else getting on Instagram and saying, hey, this guy is great and their process is great.
Right. So I took that from one person to about 20 at this point.
Okay.
And I continue to do this. If I find somebody new that I haven't seen in a while, or somebody that's in a business close by, it doesn't even have to be close by. But if I think that they're struggling, if somebody posts on one of their Instagram stories that they're struggling with back pain or an injury or something, or headaches or whatever it might be,
sure,
I'll cold call them. I'll send them a message that says, essentially, I've been following you for a little bit. I noticed that you have this, or this, or you do a job that entails this, or this.
Right.
In my practice, I know that these things often are related to spine and nervous system issues, where you load the joints, postural shifts, talk about little things like that, and then say, would you be interested in coming in for a chiropractic and nervous system examination? I've had people say to me, I don't even know what that is. I have people say to me, I've seen a chiropractor before, but I've never had a nerve system exam done before. Right. So what I've had is a lot of people. Most recently, we had somebody who does another radio show, and I do a radio show, but this person is actually a radio personality here in the city, who I approached, and she was very interested, came in and got an exam, and she'll be starting care when she gets back from Mexico shortly. Right. But it's that kind of thing that's really jumped our practice a lot, and we've gotten a lot of referrals through that. And as you said, endorsements from people that aren't me. And I'm also hearing from a lot of people. So it's been the radio show, it's been the Instagram. Right. I'll touch on the fact that we did a really big push for Google reviews. I went from about 20 Google reviews to about 80 Google reviews right now. So for people searching chiropractor near me, they're choosing us based on 80 reviews and location, but 80 reviews compared to others who have 4 or 5. So that's been a piece. But doing all these things together, I'm hearing now from people in the community that I've heard his name. I've heard that office before. Oh, you're the chiropractor my friend sees. Oh, you're the person that they were talking about. Or you're the guy that did what, help that person out. That's what's happening now. And that's where we're seeing, there are days in the office where we get 5 or 6 people every day calling to book in as a new patient. And
you've gone through this whole process, Steve, where, again, knowing you for the past 7 years, it's amazing. Just even in the last 30 minutes walking through this, starting off with, such a struggle and that pain and frustration of, and again, I remember you saying this to me so many times, I don't feel like a 200 visit a week chiropractor. I feel like a 300 or a 350 visit a week chiropractor. Like, I can do it. I'm capable of doing it. And I can only imagine how frustrating that was for you over and over. And I'm sure people listening have the same frustration. And then it was the flip, right? So here we are talking about tactics and strategies and things you can do from a principal perspective, but really you flip the switch and you recognize that it's me, I'm the problem, I need to solve that problem. And then you started taking action. And, we've been talking about actions. You changed from 1 CA to 2. You tore down the desk and built a bigger one. You started adding more time to work. And then then you added radio, and then you did Instagram, and you're using these really, modern versions of different tactics that were used before when it was letters and, relationship building and postcards. Now you're doing it in the modern world, but the principle is the same, and you're getting results, all because you're layering piece by piece by piece by piece in the appropriate order, right? We act based on how we think. And so you managed your thinking first, then you started acting, and then you just continue to layer and layer and layer. And I mean, there's really no end for you probably other than your own capacity in terms of what you can see. So
that's where we're at this point. Yeah.
And that's where you got to decide, it's just a business model perspective. Do we add associates? Do we scale in other ways? Do we grow our business vertically or horizontally, right? Where we can actually add things like increased supplement sales or increased other products, online coaching. So, I mean, there's a lot of things you can do, but it's a nice place to be in this particular spot making those decisions versus the one where you're thinking, man, I'm super stressed and frustrated. I'm not living into what I know I can be. So
where's my next new patient coming from? Where's the next payment coming from?
Yeah. And that's not a fun place to be.
It was horrible to think that way. And at this point it's become a fun thing to do where my biggest stress is, am I too busy this week?
Right. Right. Well, I love hearing the switch because, people listening in, you're getting the side of this, which is really exciting to hear Stephen talk about. Steve and I have been on some calls where it was the flip side and it was, it was a struggle. And of course, we always knew that we'd get to where we needed to go, but it is rewarding. I'm sure it's rewarding for you, obviously, but it is rewarding for me to hear you talk about this stuff, Steve. So,
and I do appreciate that. I mean, it was talking with you and being around you guys. It really did help push me to this place. So
thank you.
I want to make that clear that it wasn't just me. There was help along the way, and you and Chris, Show, Michelle, and Mike. You guys have all been awesome. So thank you very much.
We appreciate that. And you're a big part of the community, and it's actually really neat to watch how, as your growth has continued, how you have then mentored other newer doctors in the Life by Design for Chiropractors group, and I mean you've referred other doctors into the Life by Design for Chiropractors group. So it's actually it's really been full circle, and you're the perfect outline of how it works, not just in practice, but you're also the perfect outline of how it works with most of our patients, which is there's a struggle, they come in, there's an initial mindset change, they take action, they get results, and then that feedback cycle continues over and over again. So it's everywhere, guys. It's a principle. So last final message, Steve, what do you want to give? You got people listening. At this point, there's thousands of them at different varying spots in their practices or their success levels in practice, challenges, struggles, and where they are. What would you give them as a synopsis, final words?
Yeah, I mean, I would say very simply that your growth is dependent and proportional completely to your mindset, and I've heard that for so many years, but I don't think I ever really heard it. And it wasn't until I made the decision to change and make a change and see growth as something other than what I thought it was, that things started to change. So I'd say, number one, it's something that you have to do, which is shift your mindset. And then once that mindset shift happens, is to take action.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself, because I agree 1,000%. You're living proof that that's the case. So guys, I will actually put Steve's contact information in the show notes. If anybody wants to touch base with him and just ask him any questions, he's a great resource that way. And guys, thank you so much. Go to the show notes, lifebydesignforchiropractors.com, find today's episode and click on it. And thank you for listening to Life by Design for Chiropractors, the voice of reason in chiropractic.